From Racer to Savior. How the Spitfire was born from speed. Chapter 1. September 13th, 1931. The Schneider Trophy. Flight Lieutenant John Boothman pushes the Supermarine S.6B to 340 miles per hour over the Solent. The sleek racing seaplane, more sculpture than aircraft, skims 50 feet above the water, its Rolls-Royce R engine screaming at maximum power. Boothman banks hard around the turning markers, pulling forces that blur his vision. 17 days later, Flight Lieutenant George Stainforth will push this same aircraft to 407.5 mph, making it the fastest vehicle on Earth. But today, September 13th, Boothman is flying alone. The French team withdrew. The Italian Machi MC-72 suffered engine problems and couldn't compete. Britain wins the Schneider Trophy by default, claiming it permanently after 3 consecutive victories. 500,000 spectators line the beaches watching a race with only one competitor. Standing among them is Reginald Joseph Mitchell, chief designer at Supermarine Aviation Works. He's 36 years old, suffering from undiagnosed rectal cancer, and he's just perfected the racing seaplane. The S.6B represents the culmination of a decade spent chasing speed, the S4 in 1925, the S5 in 1927, the S6 in 1929, and now this final evolution, each aircraft faster, sleeker, more refined. Mitchell watches Boothman land and knows something the spectators don't. This is the last racing seaplane Britain will ever build. 18 days ago, the Air Ministry issued specification F7-30, calling for an all-metal fighter aircraft. Mitchell's next project won't be chasing trophies. It will be defending Britain from a threat growing across the Channel, Nazi Germany's rapidly expanding Luftwaffe. The DNA of the S.6B speed streamlining, powerful engines, meticulous engineering will flow directly into that fighter. The Rolls-Royce R engine's technology will evolve into the Merlin. The aerodynamic lessons learned from racing will create a fighter unlike anything flying. Mitchell doesn't know he has 6 years left to live, but he knows exactly what Britain needs. Chapter 2. 1933. The Failed Fighter. The Type 224 is a disaster. Mitchell's first attempt at meeting F730 crashes metaphorically before it crashes literally. The fixed landing gear creates massive drag. The gull-wing design looks distinctive, but performs terribly. The Rolls-Royce Goshawk engine, using evaporative cooling, overheats constantly. Maximum speed, 238 mph, pathetically slow for a modern fighter. On February 19, 1934, the Type 224 makes its first flight. Within months, it's clear the design is hopeless. The Air Ministry rejects it. Sidney Cam's Hawker Hurricane conventional reliable, easier to produce, wins the contract instead. Mitchell is devastated but undeterred. In 1933, while the Type 224 is still under construction, he undergoes surgery for rectal cancer. The prognosis is grim, but he requests authorization from Supermarine to begin a new fighter design as a private venture. No government funding, no official backing. Just Mitchell's conviction that he can build something revolutionary. Supermarine approves. The new design, designated Type 300, abandons everything about the Type 224. Retractable landing gear, low-mounted elliptical wings, streamlined fuselage. The Rolls-Royce PV-12 engine, later renamed the Merlin, producing 1030 horsepower. Mitchell pours everything he learned from the Schneider racers into this design. Minimize drag, maximize speed, make every surface aerodynamically perfect. Canadian aerodynamicist Beverly Shenstone designs the elliptical wing thin, efficient, beautiful. The shape resembles the S-6B's wings scaled up and adapted for combat. 8 303 Browning machine guns mount in the wings, 4 per side. Armament is heavy. Speed is projected at 350 mph. It's faster than any fighter flying and more maneuverable than anything Germany has. The Air Ministry watches skeptically. Then they see the preliminary performance estimates. On January 3, 1935, they issue specification F-37-34, specifically around Mitchell's design, and order a prototype. The aircraft finally has an official name, Spitfire. Mitchell hates it. He thinks Spitfire sounds ridiculous, preferring technical designations. But the name sticks, and on March 5, 1936, test pilot Joseph Mutt Summers takes the prototype K5054 into the air from Eastleigh Aerodrome near Southampton. The flight lasts 8 minutes. When Summers lands, he tells Mitchell, "I don't want anything touched." The Spitfire flies perfectly straight from the drawing board. Chapter 3. August 1940. The Few. By the time Mitchell dies on June 11, 1937, at age 42, the Spitfire is entering production. His successor, Joseph Smith, has the daunting task of transforming the prototype into a mass-producible fighter. It's not easy. The Spitfire is complex, requiring skilled labor and precision manufacturing. The elliptical wings are difficult to build. Production is slow, far slower than the Hurricane, which uses traditional construction techniques. When Germany invades Poland on September 1, 1939, only 9 RAF squadrons fly Spitfires. The Hurricane equips 31 squadrons. The Spitfire is rare, precious, advanced. The Hurricane is the workhorse. By July 1940, when the Battle of Britain begins, Fighter Command has 396 operational Hurricanes and 228 Spitfires. The ratio holds throughout the summer, 3 Hurricanes to 2 Spitfires. Both aircraft mount 8 303 Browning machine guns. Both use the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. But the Spitfire is faster, 355 mph, versus the Hurricane's 322 mph. The Spitfire climbs better turns, tighter fights at higher altitudes. Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding, commanding Fighter Command, develops tactics that use each aircraft's strengths. Spitfires engage German fighters, primarily Messerschmitt Bf-109s. Hurricanes attack the bombers, Heinkel He-111s, Dornier Do-17s, Junkers Ju-88s. It's not a rigid rule. Fighters take whatever targets appear. But generally, the faster Spitfires duel with German escorts, while the steadier Hurricanes destroy the bombers. The statistics tell a complex story. Hurricanes shoot down more German aircraft, roughly 60% of Luftwaffe losses during the battle. But Spitfire squadrons have lower attrition rates and higher victory-to-loss ratios. The Spitfire's superior performance means fewer Spitfire pilots die. The Hurricane's greater numbers and stability as a gun platform mean more bombers destroyed. Together, they're unbeatable. Separately, Britain would have lost. Chapter 4. The Duel. Pilot Officer Bob Doe of 234 Squadron encounters a Messerschmitt Bf-109 over the English Channel at 25,000 feet. The German pilot is skilled, experienced, aggressive. He sees Doe's Spitfire and turns to engage. Both aircraft are closely matched. The Bf-109E has a maximum speed of 354 mph, nearly identical to the Spitfire Mky's 355 mph. The German fighter climbs slightly better below 20,000 feet. The Spitfire turns tighter. The 109 has fuel injection. The Spitfire's carburetor cuts out under -G. The 109 mounts two 20mm cannons and 2 machine guns. The Spitfire has 8 rifle-caliber machine guns. On paper, the Messerschmitt should win. German pilots have more combat experience. They fought in Spain, Poland, France. They use superior tactics, flying in pairs, rather than the RAF's outdated Vic formations. They have cannon armament that can destroy a Spitfire with a single hit. But Doe has advantages the German doesn't expect. He's flying over England. If damaged, he can land anywhere. The German must nurse a wounded aircraft back across the channel or bail out over enemy territory. Doe has unlimited fuel. He can fight until ammunition runs out. The Bf-109 has 30 minutes of combat fuel before it must turn for France. Most importantly, Doe is defending his home. He'll die before retreating. The dogfight lasts 3 minutes. 3 minutes of maximum G turns, desperate climbs, diving attacks, reversals, barrel rolls, everything both pilots know. Doe gets behind the 109, briefly fires a burst, sees strikes on the German's wing. The 109 dives away, heading for France. Doe doesn't pursue. He's low on ammunition and fuel. He lands at Warmwell, his Spitfire's wings riddled with 7.92 millimeter bullet holes. The armor plate behind his seat stopped 2 rounds that would have killed him. He's shaking from adrenaline. The ground crew counts 47 bullet strikes on his aircraft. Doe will fly 84 combat sorties during the Battle of Britain. He'll shoot down 14 German aircraft and share in destroying another 4. He'll be shot down twice, bailing out once, and crash landing once. He'll survive the war and live to be 91 years old. But on this day in August 1940, he's just one of the few, the 2 9-1-17 pilots who fought in fighter command that summer. By October 31st, 544 of them will be dead. Chapter 5. The Myth and the Math. The Hurricane shot down more German aircraft during the Battle of Britain. This fact is indisputable. Hurricanes accounted for approximately 60% of Luftwaffe losses, roughly 1,500 aircraft. Spitfires destroyed 40%, approximately 1,000 aircraft. The Hurricane was more numerous, participated in more combats, and had a steadier gun platform for shooting bombers. Yet the Spitfire captured public imagination. Lord Beaverbrook, Minister of Aircraft Production, organized the Spitfire Fund, a propaganda campaign encouraging citizens to donate money for Spitfire production. Towns, companies, and individuals raised funds. Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands donated $215,000, enough for 43 Spitfires. The aircraft became a symbol of British resistance, featured in newsreels, posters, speeches. The Hurricane, equally crucial to victory, never received the same adoration. Sidney Cam, its designer, didn't die tragically young like Mitchell. The Hurricane wasn't as beautiful as the Spitfire. It was practical, sturdy, reliable, admirable qualities, but not romantic ones. The numbers tell the real story. Spitfire squadrons had lower loss rates than Hurricane squadrons, likely because the Spitfire's higher performance allowed pilots to choose when to engage and when to escape. Against Bf-109s, the Spitfire was competitive. The Hurricane was outclassed, but against bombers, both were devastating. Fighter Command never implemented formal tactics assigning Spitfires to fighters and Hurricanes to bombers. Controllers couldn't distinguish between German formation types on radar. Squadrons engaged whatever appeared, but pilots noticed that Spitfires handled high-altitude combat better, while Hurricanes excelled at lower altitudes where most bombers operated. On September 15, 1940, now celebrated as Battle of Britain Day, nearly 200 Spitfires and Hurricanes defended London against massive German raids. The RAF claimed 185 victories that day. Post-war research in German archives revealed actual losses were under 60 aircraft. But the numbers didn't matter. The Germans saw that fighter command was unbroken, functional, determined. The Luftwaffe couldn't achieve air superiority. Operation Sea Lion. The planned invasion of Britain was postponed indefinitely, then cancelled. Britain had won. The Spitfire and Hurricane together had saved the nation. Chapter 6. The Evolution. The Spitfire Mk. I that fought in 1940 was merely the beginning. Over the next 5 years, the design evolved constantly. The Mk2 added more power. The Mkv became the most produced variant, 6th 479 aircraft. The Mk9 rushed into service to counter Germany's Focke-Wulf FW-190, mounted the Merlin 61 engine, with two-stage supercharging increasing power to 565 horsepower and top speed to 408 km/h. Later Marks pushed performance further. The Mk14, powered by the Rolls-Royce Griffin engine producing over 2,000 horsepower, reached 448 mph faster than almost anything flying. The Mk22 and 24 entering service as the war ended were barely recognizable as Spitfires, with contra-rotating propellers, reinforced airframes, and performance exceeding 450 mph. From 1936 to 1948, 20 351 Spitfires were built, not counting the 408 Naval Seafire variants. The aircraft served in every theater: Europe, North Africa, Mediterranean, Burma, Pacific. It flew reconnaissance missions, photographing German defenses. It escorted bombers deep into Germany. It hunted V-1 flying bombs over England. It strafed ground targets in Normandy. Well-known aces flew Spitfires. Johnny Johnson scored 34 victories, all in Spitfires, becoming the top-scoring Western Allied ace against the Luftwaffe. Douglas Bader, with 20 victories, flew Spitfires despite losing both legs in a pre-war crash. George Burling, a Canadian with 31 1/3 victories, flew Spitfires over Malta. South African sailor Merlin scored 27. New Zealanders Alan Deere and Colin Gray each scored 17 and 27, respectively. The aircraft fought until the war's end and beyond. Spitfires remained in RAF service until 1954. The last combat mission occurred in 1954 during the Malayan emergency. Some air forces flew Spitfires into the 1960s. But its greatest achievement remained July-October 1940. 4 months when Britain stood alone. When 917 pilots flew Spitfires and Hurricanes against the most powerful air force in the world. When the fate of democracy hung on whether a few hundred young men could shoot down enough German bombers to prevent invasion. They did, and Mitchell's racer-turned-fighter was central to that victory. Chapter 7. The Legacy. The Schneider Trophy sits in the Science Museum in South Kensington, London. The S.6B that won its serial S-1895 sits nearby in an unrestored state, its once gleaming aluminum, now dull, its Rolls-Royce R engine a dummy replica. Visitors photograph it, marveling at the streamlined perfection. It looks impossibly fast, even sitting still. Mitchell never saw the Battle of Britain. He died 3 years before the war began. But his racing seaplanes made the Spitfire possible. The pursuit of speed for speed's sake, winning trophies, setting records, pushing aerodynamic boundaries, created the engineering foundation for the fighter that saved Britain. The elliptical wing came from the S.6B's high-speed wing design. The Merlin engine evolved from the Schneider Trophy's Rolls-Royce R. The obsession with streamlining, with minimizing drag, with making every surface perfect, that came from racing where fractions of miles per hour meant victory or defeat. Mitchell brought that racing mindset to fighter design. The Spitfire wasn't just fast for a fighter, it was fast, period. It had to be because Mitchell knew speed meant survival. The pilots who flew Spitfires over England in 1940 were alive because Mitchell had spent the 1920s building racing seaplanes, learning what made aircraft fast, discovering how to wring every possible mile per hour from metal and engines and aerodynamics. Today, fewer than 70 Spitfires remain airworthy worldwide. They fly at air shows carefully maintained by devotees who understand what the aircraft represents. When a Spitfire flies, Merlin engine, roaring elliptical wings slicing through air, people stop and watch. Even 85 years after its first flight, the aircraft commands attention. It's not just nostalgia. It's recognition that this aircraft mattered. That design decisions Mitchell made in 1934 to 1936 saved Britain in 1940. That a racing seaplane's DNA translated into a fighter became legendary. Winston Churchill said, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." He was speaking of the pilots, but he might as well have been speaking of Mitchell, who died not knowing his greatest creation would save his nation, who spent his final years battling cancer while perfecting an aircraft he'd never see in combat, who took everything he learned chasing trophies and built the fighter Britain needed. The Spitfire was born from a racer. It became the legend that saved Britain. And in that transformation lies one of aviation's most perfect stories, speed for glory's sake, becoming speed for survival's sake, and proving just as victorious.